Have you ever listened to the wildly popular Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast and looked at John Lee Dumas and thought, man, that guy's figured out how to do it all on his own? Well, today's guest is the heartbeat behind Entrepreneurs on Fire. And what's so incredible is not only is she his wife, but she's his incredible business partner and has been from almost the very beginning. Kate Erickson is an incredible marketer, entrepreneur, and a huge part of the success of Entrepreneurs on Fire. Today, she shares a little bit behind the scenes, how they run their programs, their systems, and what you can do to really dial in your podcast or business in a way that separates you from the competition and rises you above all of the noise. Let's hop into the episode. Hey, welcome back to What's Working Now. I'm Katie Richardson here with Kate Erickson. And if you're thinking to yourself, that name sounds familiar. Yes, you've probably heard of her before. Kate Erickson is the heartbeat at Entrepreneurs on Fire. Yes, the very popular podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, an award-winning podcast where John Lee Dumas interviews inspiring entrepreneurs who are truly on fire. She is also the host of Kate's Take, where she shares a behind-the-scenes look at running a seven-figure business, and she gives you such great detail. By the way, it's like everything that you need. She's also a co-host of Nicole and Kate Can Relate, a podcast about the power of conversations. Her goal is to help entrepreneurs achieve financial and lifestyle freedom. Kate, welcome to the show.
Katie, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Well, people might be interested to know that we are neighbors here in Puerto Rico, which is kind of fun, kind of cool. Yeah, we see each other walking/running in the mornings, which is super fun. And I'm excited to dive into your story because I know I'm just scratching the surface of what I know about you. So I believe that you have a really unique perspective that allows you to live this unique life that you and John have created. And so tell us the story of an experience that really radically formed and shaped how you view the world today.
Yeah, I love this question because it really gets me thinking about the experiences that I've had in my life. Because if you told me even, like 11 years ago that I would be in Puerto Rico, complete lifestyle and financial freedom, living the lifestyle that I have right now, I don't even know if I knew that this existed 11 years ago. And I say 11 because we just celebrated our 10-year business anniversary.
Wow.
That was just like such an exciting milestone for us. So when I look back over the past 10 years and I think of an experience that has just radically shaped, who I am today, how I look at the world, my passions, the things that are important to me, I think back to 2014, and I had traveled very minimally at that point in my life, but travel was always something that was so intriguing to me. Like, to go out and see the world and to be in different cultures and to experience different ways of life and to see things that I'd never seen before. Like, I just loved the idea of that. But up until that point, I had always worked a corporate job where I had very little vacation. What vacation I did have, I was spending with my family and going to see grandparents and all that fun stuff. And I remember at one of the last jobs that I had finally gone out on a limb. I booked myself a ticket to Hawaii. I was going to go by myself, just live it up. I'm like, I'm doing this. Nobody's going to tell me what to do.
I love it.
And then my boss denied me the time.
Oh, get out.
So I had to cancel that ticket, which in hindsight was a big eye opener for me because that was someone directly getting in the way of me being able, not just something, my job, right?
Yeah.
So John and I start this business together. And in 2014, we're like, we should take a trip. Both of us are so passionate about travel. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I said, I don't know, anywhere. It doesn't even matter. And he said, let's pick 5 countries in Europe. We're going to go to all 5 of them in 2 weeks. We're going to completely unplug from our business. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like a kid in a candy store. I didn't even know how to handle this idea. And we did it. We booked a ticket. And I remember so clearly John telling me that he booked that ticket because I thought, wow, like we get to decide this. We
Wow.
have the freedom to buy this plane ticket and to go for 2 weeks and to put up an out of office, to unplug from our business, to enjoy this time together, to experience 5 countries. And that experience opened my eyes to anything's possible. Whatever we want
Mm.
our life to look like, we can create that. And that was
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh, I get chills talking about it.
I do too. Like, I love those moments where, we grow up creating different ideas of what our life will look like. And for me personally, it was a pretty small little box that I was trying to fit myself in. And then when you have these moments that obliterate that box, and it's like, hold on a second, you're the creator of your life. You get to make decisions. And yeah, you have to take actions to support what it is that you're saying that you want. But like, how, this is your life and you get to make those decisions. And it's exciting to think about that moment where it's such a contrast, right? From that moment of having your boss shut it down to, wow, I actually get to do this, and just dreamed about it. And here we are doing it together. One of the things that's so cool is that not only are you celebrating 10 years of building this successful business, but doing it alongside your husband, your now husband. Like, Kate, I'm sure everyone's told you the statistics. That's really rare. And yet you guys knock it out of the park. And it's really cool to watch you guys, how you complement each other. What are some key things that you would say that have allowed you to not just survive it, but what I see is you guys are really thriving as partners. What would you say are some of the key elements to that being successful?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most common things that people say to me when they hear that John and I work together is like, how on earth do you do that? Because I know that it's not, like you said, it's tough, right? It's not super easy. And for a lot of couples, I don't think that it's for everyone. And I don't think it would work for everyone. I'm so grateful that it works for us. And I think one of the key reasons why it works for us is exactly what you mentioned, is we complement each other. We don't both excel in the same areas. We excel in totally different areas. And so we're able to kind of plug each other's weaknesses. And we didn't know that in the beginning, which is what made it a tough start. When John first asked me to quit my job and to join him on the team, he launched the podcast. We were living together in Maine. He launched the podcast. I was working in an advertising and marketing agency, and the podcast took off. I was like, what's happening? I didn't even really know what a podcast was. He's like, no, there are people asking to pay me money to talk about their books on the show, and people want me to coach them. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. I had no doubts, because John is just such an incredibly driven person that when he sets his mind to something, he researches it, he dives in, like there's no way that he left a stone unturned. So when he asked me to quit my job and to join the team and said, I think we could do wonderful, amazing things together, I thought, well, I don't really know what that looks like. And that was scary for me at the time. So through some exercises and very open communication and sitting down and writing what I was passionate about and what I believed I was great at and what I believed I was not good at, and comparing that list with the same that John did for himself, we were able to see pretty clearly, like, wow, you're really great at all these things that I'm not, and I'm really great at all these things that you're not. In addition to those being the things that we're not good at, naturally, we don't really enjoy doing them. So we were able to kind of create this vision and this roadmap for the company where we each had our own lane, where we trusted each other, where we supported each other in our decisions. We don't ever like make a decision solo without the support of each other. And I think that the big moves that we've made in our business, that's been really key to helping both of us feel ownership in the business. And yeah, I mean, over the years, it's just a lot of communication. There's of course been rough patches, but yeah.
Which I am very curious about, because nothing's ever perfect. And I worked with my husband for 8 years in our business. And, it sounds so simple what you're saying. I got clear on what I'm good at and I'm going to focus on. John got clear on what he's good at. I'm going to focus on. But like that simple thing in itself in the beginning, I can see how important that is. And because you had those clearly defined lanes that you were each in. And then you also mentioned trust, like you had to trust John in those areas of the business, and he had to conversely trust you. And that combination, it allows you to powerfully operate together and to build something incredible. And, as you said, when you guys got started, 2013, 2014, podcasting was like kind of this strange fringe thing at the time. And here you've been in the game for 10 years now. Going along with what's working now, I'm sure a lot has changed over the 10 years. What do you feel is working now in podcasting specifically?
In podcasting specifically, I think that niching down is working really well. I mean, people who are launching podcasts that are around these broad topics and thinking that they can find and grow an audience quickly, it's just not happening because there's too much out there right now. I don't think that there's too much for someone to get started. I think there's too much for someone to get started not thinking about carving out a niche for themselves and being able to speak to super specific audience. Right now, I think that's what we need. And that uniqueness, I'm sure you've seen it in the podcasting space as a podcaster yourself. It's hard to come by. A lot of shows kind of sound exactly the same. And that's not going to help you stand out and grow an audience. Now, our podcast was also very unique in that we built a business around it. And a lot of people already have an existing business and they're adding a podcast to it. So there's a lot of different scenarios or situations that someone might be in where if you already have an existing brand or you are already a personality or an influencer and you're starting a podcast after having built that, that's of course going to be a lot easier than you have no presence, no business, no anything, and you just launch a podcast out of nowhere. So it's definitely situational as well.
As you're describing all that makes so much sense because that's the beauty of the world that we live in today, is it doesn't have to be a broad message anymore, and you can get really specific. And I can see how that makes that podcast message so attractive, right? It's unique and different and distinct. And we have the ability and the tools necessary to be able to do that today, which is really cool. You're in an exciting time in life. You're pregnant with your first baby and entering a new season of life. What are some things that you're doing to prepare for this next phase of having a child? And how do you see that impacting your business?
Yeah, it's interesting to look back at our business and kind of see the chapters that we've been through of like launching the business and being, kind of in that full-on mode where everything's focused on how do we make this work? And you sacrifice a lot in those times, right? And then we kind of went into this phase of like, okay, things are moving. We kind of have some momentum. We can test a few things out and kind of have fun with this. Like, what courses do we want to launch, or do we want to run a mastermind? And we kind of tested out a bunch of different things in that realm. And that was a big growth period. And it was exciting. And again, it was fun trying new things and seeing what would work and what wouldn't work. And then we kind of got into a chapter of what do we want our life to look like? Kind of going back to, the beginning of this episode. Do we want to be launching all these products and services and working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and hiring more team members? Or do we want to focus on our lifestyle and kind of build our business around our life versus the other way around? So we started basically like 80-20ing our business, and we closed a couple of our programs. We let go of a couple of contractors. We just really leaned out, and that felt amazing because we started transitioning into what does this life look like when we wake up every day and we get to do whatever we want. And sometimes that is working on the business and sometimes it's not. And now we're going into this chapter that's completely brand new for us. And I feel so grateful for how the business and our lifestyle is set up right now, because I know that a lot of people believe that there's not a perfect time to start a family, but I truly believe that this is a perfect time for us. And so it feels really amazing. I feel prepared, and I feel as
Mm,
prepared as you can be. I know that, I know that I can't know what's going to happen
sure.
in all of that, and I'm good with that. I'll be
Yeah.
flexible,
Yeah.
but I feel really good about where we're at, how the business is running. And my main focus right now is really just, again, I want the flexibility so that when the baby comes, we can choose what our life looks like. We can choose
Mm,
if we want to continue working, hard on the business, or we can choose if we want to take a couple of months off and not think about the business. And yeah, to be in a place where you can kind of orchestrate that is an
mhm.
incredible feeling.
Kate, I love hearing this. As when I was a younger entrepreneur, it was all about getting into a big warehouse and having a big team and having contractors all over the world. And, I built a international company with distribution in 26 different countries. And once you experience building something that's really big and complex, then you start to ask yourself, how can I simplify this? Like, this is kind of taking over my life. And what's interesting is I think that's such a beautiful moment where you can own with significant dignity that I have a really simple business. And I heard an interview with James Clear on Tim Ferriss recently, and he very boldly owned the fact that he has one employee. And I was like, James, you and I get each other. I love this. And so I am curious, as you are simplifying the business, focusing it, stripping away the noise and the extra and the distractions and maybe the unnecessary, and really distilling this business down to what you want it to be so that it serves you. Are you open to sharing a little bit what that looks like as far as your organization, key team members, and kind of the things that you guys are focusing on versus maybe what it used to look like?
Absolutely. So right now, and this kind of started back in that chapter that I was referring to of like, okay, wait a second, what do we want this to look like? At that transition point, when we kind of had that aha moment, we had just hired kind of like a business developer, a marketing manager. I don't even know what you want to call the position, but
Okay.
she was basically coming in and helping us kind of refocus the business and start building what was working really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we zeroed in on the keys of our business. The podcast is clearly like the center of our business.
Mm-hmm.
That's our lead generator. That's where we provide the most value to our audience. That's our brand. That's how people know us. That's the first way that people typically find out about us. So that's kind of like our epicenter is the podcast.
Yeah.
So that content, that system, those interviews, those relationships are obviously very integral to our business. We put a lot of focus into that. And then when we kind of stepped back and looked at, okay, if that's how people are usually introduced to us, what do we want to happen after that? What do we want to
Mm-hmm.
happen once somebody starts listening to the podcast and they say, this is amazing. I love this content. I want to take the next step with you. And so we started looking at, of our audience, what do they typically need as a next step after that? And we had courses on webinars. We have a
Yeah.
podcasting course. We had a mastermind. John was doing some coaching. So there was so many different directions for someone to go. And that's
Yeah.
confusing. And
Yeah.
we didn't even really know where to send people. And so we thought, like, what does this look like if we just completely strip it down and go back to what we've always done in our business, which is just listen to your audience. What is it that they're asking you for? What is it that they need? And ditch everything else. And
Mm-hmm.
so we came up with a set of free courses that lead to our paid products. And we
Mm.
really dumbed it down. We closed our webinar course. That was just like, it's a constant upkeep. Webinars are always changing. Software's changing. The way people present webinars is changing. And so we kind of let that go. It was also our lowest generating
Okay.
product.
Mm-hmm.
Podcasting, that's what we do. And that was our flagship course. So we still run our
Mm-hmm.
podcasting course today, 10 years on, which we're very proud of and believe is the number one course and community for podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
So we created a free podcast course and a free webinar, both of which lead people to our paid product. So you come in, to Entrepreneurs on Fire. You love the podcast. If you are someone who might be interested in podcasting, we have a free course for you. We have a webinar for you. It introduces you to our paid product. So we did that with everything that we had to offer.
Okay.
Another one of those things was, what do most entrepreneurs struggle with? Finding their big idea. What is my big idea that I can go all in on? I have a million different ideas and I don't know which one to pursue. So we created a free course called Your Big Idea, and that helped you find your big idea. And then it led to a mastermind and a course. So it was really about figuring out what we wanted our customer or avatar's journey to look like. We knew the podcast was the epicenter. Where do they go after that? What can we provide them to help them on their journey? So we continued, of course, with our content on the blog. We have great website ranking and SEO because of how long we've been doing this. So we dedicate time to that. We dedicate time to our paid products that I just mentioned. We dedicate time to the podcast, and our sponsorships come from that. And we dedicate time to our affiliate partners, which are now like very, very few. We used to do affiliate partnerships with a lot of people, and that was a lot of launches and a lot of time. And we kind of decided that that wasn't where we wanted to spend our time anymore. So ClickFunnels is like a longtime affiliate partner of ours. We still promote them. We actually have a free course on funnels that leads to our ClickFunnels affiliate. So that's kind of what the core of our business looks like right now, and how we're focusing our time based on what we know is our highest net activities, both in like ROI and dollars, but also in the impact that we're able to create for our audience with those things.
Yeah, which is really cool, because part of it, we can make guesses and assumptions and hear other people, what works for them, but ultimately you have to try and test things. And you guys have had this 10-year period where you've been able to try and test things. And sometimes what can happen, this is the language I use in design, what can start to happen is you build this Frankenstein, and it's like, yeah, it works, but it's like a little wonky. And then you get to the season where you get to make decisions and strip it down. And it's like, what do I want? And where do I want to be spending my time? And who do I want to be attracting and having conversations with? And, you mentioned you had a lot of offers in different places that you could send people, and that starts to become confusing. And so in that phase, in the place that you're in now, you're able to say, okay, we've tried this, tested this, this is working, and you get to strip it down. You mentioned something that you guys are really good at is listening to your audience. And I am so curious about this, Kate, because how do you communicate with your podcast audience? It's actually, I love people and connecting and like really having that connection. And if I'm really honest, I feel very disconnected from my listeners. And so I'm really curious, what are you doing to engage with people and to get to know your audience? Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. And if you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
John did a lot of things right in the beginning. And one of the huge things that he did really well in the beginning is he started building community from the very start. He's always referred to his audience as Fire Nation. So people tuning in, they feel a part of something. Like, this is your podcast. I'm doing this for you. He's always been completely reachable and engaged. If you reach out to John via email, he will personally be replying to you. There's been a lot of variations and calls to action on the podcast where we'll encourage people to reach out to us via email. We're very engaged on social media. So people who would reach out on social media, comment on posts that we were having, we're always continuing that conversation. And I think that a lot of times we miss out on engagement because we think, okay, I'm behind a microphone and I'm publishing an episode, and it's not like somebody can just turn on their microphone and talk back to me or like ask me a question. but you really have to be like so involved in encouraging that. And we've done that for 10 years.
Yeah.
Here's my email address. Let me know what your favorite part of today's episode was. Do you have an episode recommendation, a topic you want to hear about? Reach out and let us know. So every email that was coming into our inbox, and actually something that I did in the very beginning, one of my first like projects that I took on when I joined the business, I signed up for alerts every time somebody would sign up to our email newsletter. So I would get a little ping in my inbox that said like, Katie just signed up for the Fire Nation newsletter. I would reach out to you, say, Katie, this is Kate. Welcome to Fire Nation. We're so excited that you're digging the podcast, and I want to help you find whatever resources will be helpful for you. And I would love to know what your biggest struggle is right now. And I did that for months on end. Yes, it took a lot of time. No, it was not scalable. It was one of the best things I've ever done for myself as an entrepreneur to understand who our audience is and what they're struggling with. And every single one of those answers was like, ping, 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 ping. You start to see repetition. And a lot of people were struggling with support. They didn't have people around them who understood what they were going through. We started a mastermind. A lot of people were coming to us and saying, how do you do this podcasting thing? It sounds so amazing, but I have no idea where to start. So we launched our podcasting course. So those conversations, like no matter where you're having them, in your email inbox, on social media, you know, through direct messages, people commenting on your posts, like there are so many different opportunities for it. It's just one of those things that you can't really scale. So it takes time.
Yeah, it does. It's really cool to hear the creation of that, how both have been on facilitating the conversation on the other side and showing them how to do that and creating those opportunities. And I mean, it makes sense as you describe it. And I think what I was seeing as you were describing all of that is, I think maybe I haven't looked at my podcast as a product designer. If I like looked at it almost like a product, then I start to see the answers for how to solve that problem. And it starts to make sense. And I mean, you guys were looking at it as a community, which I think is honestly even better. And what's interesting is in the beginning, there isn't a community. So you have to envision that community. And as the first person shows up, they're your community. And you have to be willing to see that vision.
I think a lot of it too was in the connections that we were making through the podcast. Like John hired a mentor. He became a part of a mastermind. He was surrounding himself with other people who were on this journey to creating a podcast as well. He was being introduced to great influencers and creators in the space because of his mentor. He was attending events and conferences, and, you know, he's an outgoing guy. He loves being in crowds and talking to people and meeting new people. Every guest that he had on the podcast was a potential relationship builder. So I think that there's a lot happening there too, where a lot of the people who come on the podcast are fans of the podcast. So we get to talk to our audience every single day, pretty much. So yeah, I think they're outside of just thinking of like your podcast listeners, there are a lot of other people around you too that can be a part of your community.
Yeah. You know, for somebody like you to have built the life that you have, I know there are things that I would describe as Kate's magic and things that you're really good at. And I would love to take a second and have you brag about yourself. Maybe that makes you uncomfortable. I would love to hear, I think it's really great when somebody who's as talented as you are and has proven themselves to really own your magic and your gifts. What are some things that you just happen to be really good at? And maybe what are some things that you do to continue to develop yourself in those areas?
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I would say since as long as I can remember, just like project management is kind of my zone. I love hearing an idea or a vision, and that's what John's great at coming up with. And then I get to kind of pick it apart and see how we make this work. Like, what software do we need? What systems can we set up? What team members do we need to help us with this? So project management is definitely like one place that I thrive. I'm really great just at time management and productivity. I'm super focused on working on the right things at the right time. not wasting my time on things that aren't moving the needle, that aren't getting me closer to my goals. I'm very detail oriented. So I'm very much like in the weeds of things, sometimes to a fault, probably. But I think it works well with John and I's dynamic because he's very much like, I have this idea, let's go and do it. And I'll kind of like, wait a second, let's pick it apart a little bit.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the areas where I excel and just have a ton of fun. I could talk about that stuff all day.
Well, and I've personally experienced it. And that kind of leads me to my next question is Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's a podcast, it's a business, right? And you have this skill set that you've developed, and in exchange for value, aka money, you help and support people. And yet I also know you as this extremely generous individual who, on your own dime, your own time, you also facilitate conversations and networking for people in your area. And I've personally come to some of these meetings, and we had dinner the other night with some other incredible entrepreneurs. And I'm really curious how you navigate those two worlds, because one is, it definitely has a monetization model. And then one is about giving and being really generous. And I've personally experienced that from you, which is so beautiful. So how do you navigate those two worlds and decide where and when you're going to give versus where and when you need to send an invoice?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I've always looked at kind of that giving side of things as a big motivator and a fueler for me. There's probably been times in our business that I've done that when I shouldn't have, when I should have sent an invoice and I didn't. But I believe in paying it forward. There's a lot of people who have done this for me and provided amazing mentorship for me. And when I first came into the entrepreneurial space, I had no clue. I didn't know what being an entrepreneur was all about. Excuse me. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to really manage my time properly. I was used to a boss telling me what to do, and I would just go do it. So there was so much that when I look back that I was navigating as I stepped into this space. And now that I have been lucky enough to be where I am today, I want to be that for other people, because I know it's not easy. And there's such an incredible community of female entrepreneurs here. Some of them, like yourself, just complete rock stars, like blowing the roof off, and others that are kind of trying to figure this out. Like,
Sure.
Is entrepreneurship right for me? Like, I don't even really have an idea right now, but I'm inspired by this world and I want to learn more. And so if I can be a part of that and helping people discover that, I mean, I want people to know, just like I found out, that you can create this, because I didn't know that before I met John. I didn't know that you could do that. I thought everybody worked in corporate America and climbed the corporate ladder, and that's just what you did. And to find out that there's other options, if I can help expose that, then I would love to be a part of that, paid or unpaid.
I appreciate you attempting to answer that question and sharing. I know it's something that's very nuanced, and it might depend on the person, their situation. I think what has really inspired me with you is you don't just help people in your neighborhood and have a conversation. You have an organized system for helping the people in your neighborhood and supporting and connecting and networking. And it's really inspiring to watch you do that and to be really intentional about your giving and your generosity, and to literally have a plan for how you're going to do that. You made a decision on who you wanted to be in your life, and then you put together a plan, which I would say is probably a really good theme for the life of Kate Erickson. It's like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Okay, let's make a plan around that. Let's get all the details and figure that out. And it's cool to watch you do that. And I think, everybody who's listening can relate, because when you become expert at something, whether it's a friend or a sibling or a neighbor, people are going to, can I pick your brain? Can I have a conversation with you? And you've gone the next step, because I know you do that, and you've gone the next step, and you've even organized things in a way to facilitate this networking and these conversations. And I wanted to highlight that because I think it's really unique and super inspiring. And so I wanted other people to get a chance to see that side of you because it's so special. And I only recently started coming to these meetings and I realized I was really guarded. I've had people take advantage of me, my products, my services. And like you, I'm really generous. And I, in a sense, overextended my generosity. And that's part of where that question is coming from, my own personal curiosity, like, seems to be working really well for you. How are you doing that? And it's cool to watch you connect with people like Heidi Deco and Selena Sue and be really intentional about this. And like you said, you know, it can be lonely being an entrepreneur and there's so much unknown and there's a lot of traps out there too. And to have someone who's thriving in this world, navigating entrepreneurship and doing it so well, and then being so generous to turn around and share that with people, it's really inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Do you have time for a couple rapid fire questions, Kate?
Let's do it.
I mean, before I jump into that, this has been a wonderful conversation. It's really beautiful to get to know you and to hear more how you navigate the complexities of entrepreneurship. And it's really inspiring to see the business that you guys have built and the systems that you have to support that. It's really cool. I'm really curious. Has there been some advice that was given to you in your life that really helped you in a critical moment?
Yes, a lot. But what stands out to me is I very distinctly remember when John asked me to quit my job and join the team. I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I don't know what to do. I could start my own business. I can join John in this venture that he's created, or I can keep my 9-to-5 job and be comfy and have health benefits and all that. And I was like, what do I do? I wanted my dad to tell me. I'm like, please tell me what to do. And he told me to trust my gut. And I've carried that advice with me for that long, and I'll carry it with me forever. I've gone to that many, many, many times. Trust your gut.
Wow. I love that, Kate. It's something I've done, but I guess I hide that from people. I felt embarrassed about it because it feels like not real or not facts. But I love that. So good. Now I want to meet your dad.
He's incredible. Amazing.
What's something that you do consistently every day?
Work out. I love working out. And moving my body is like the number one thing that I do. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning, I put on my workout clothes, and I love being out in nature, hiking, running, lifting weights, being on my Peloton. Doesn't really matter what it is. I just love getting my heart pumping and breaking a sweat.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Now I want to hear about some books that you love or read, but specifically, is there a book that you find yourself revisiting or you keep it on your nightstand? You read it more than once?
Yes. I am obsessed with Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Have you read this book?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that book changed my life like 8 years ago.
Ditto.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I've probably read that book like 6 or 7 times now, and I will never hesitate to pick it up and read it again. I think it has so many amazing reminders.
Yeah. Oh, when it came out, instant classic. Have you read Effortless? I'm sure you've read that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Have you
also,
interviewed Greg?
Yes. And I was such a fangirl. I'm like outside John's door, like listening. I was that way for Guy Raz too. When he brought Guy Raz on the show, I was awesome. Like, my mind is freaking out right now.
That's so fun.
Please tell him I said hi.
I love it. Well, on that, what are some of your favorite podcasts? I mean, of course, Entrepreneurs on Fire, Kate's Take, Nicole and Kate. What are some of your other favorite podcasts?
I'm a huge Guy Raz fan. I love How I Built This.
Same.
I think it's such a well-produced, interesting, unique show. Kind of along those same lines is a show called Finding Founders. I don't know if you've listened to this podcast before. It's an awesome production. tells a very unique story, kind of along the same lines of how I built this, only the stories are just like, sometimes they have nothing to do with the business. They're about like the person's background and how they became the person that they are today. And that's a good show. There are also some series podcasts that I've really loved.
Ooh, I like a good series.
Yeah. There's a series that started with Making Oprah, I believe, was the first one.
Oh yeah.
Then they
I heard
did
that one.
Making Obama.
Okay.
And then I believe they did Making Beyonce. And I
Nice.
thought that was a really, I loved the Making Oprah one, was just like so inspiring and incredible what she has created. Yeah, those are the ones that are top of mind for me.
That's awesome. So good.
Mhm.
Kate, if people want to connect with you, go to the website. I know you've got a couple different options. Tell people where to find you.
Absolutely. Everything we do is over at eofire.com. And true to what I preached in this episode, I'm always open to a hello in my email inbox. I'm kate@eofire.com if you want to reach out to me via email.
Okay, awesome. And are you guys active on Instagram or LinkedIn?
Instagram, yes. My Instagram handle is kind of funky because I got locked out of my original Instagram account.
Okay.
So I'm Kate L. Erickson with an underscore.
Okay. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Kate, this has been amazing. Personally, it's been awesome and inspiring to hear you tell your story and talk about the evolution of the podcast, the evolution of the business, and entering this new season, this new phase. And just wanted to personally say thank you so much for being on the show.
I so appreciate it. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now.